Hello! We've had too much political content on this channel recently. Let's get back to some Warhammer! And with that in mind, I am Richard, the channel is called New Memphis, and I am so glad that you could be here today. As I am now attempting to upload daily, the painting videos are going to be a little shorter and a little more informal from here on out. Hope you guys are into that. Just so happens that when watching my analytics, there's a distinct drop-off when my face is no longer on screen, which I take as a compliment. Thank you guys. So I'm going to talk a little more, like I said, informally about the project. I'm going to go over the steps that I took and why I took them, and I hope it's going to be interesting, and we're just going to try to explore the model and where we were going. I also want to say, officially, thank you guys so much for 1,000 subscribers. You guys are all amazing, and God, this intro doesn't need to be much longer, does it? I feel like we've done too much 312 recently. I need to get something else. That is way too much head. What was that? Fit. Come on. There we go. We got it. Okay. The head almost got out of control there. Let's get started. And the first thing I want to admit to you guys is that I actually wasn't excited to start painting this miniature. If I can call it that. It's more of a centerpiece, I guess. I'm not a huge fan of the Kruleboyz. Based on the sales, clearly no one was. I don't think fans were really into the half-orc, half-Decepticon, but also designed by a 12-year-old who collects knives vibe. But our previous Kruleboyz turned out really, really well, and I will admit that some of my least favorite models in terms of, coming in a box set have ended up being some of the best projects at the end, thanks to clever kit bashing and a good paint scheme. So I'm expecting this model to do the same. And after I finally saw it primed, I knew that this was going to come together well. The three primers that were used were McCrag Blue, one sec. Aubergine. And of course the Leafy Green that we've used on Kruleboyz previously, as well as our 100% plant-based Necrons. I didn't use any really fancy techniques with these. I literally was covering sections of it with like a plastic, grocery store bag in order to be able to spray straight from a rattle can on certain sections. And I'm only mentioning that to remind you guys that you don't need fancy equipment to have cool models. Anyway, yeah, the primer turned out really, really well, though I do want to take a sec real fast to explain exactly what in the world is going on with that base. So originally I got this model and built it and then realized, oh, I don't have any bases for it because I bought it in an eBay lot. Despite the fact we've been painting the Dominion box for so long, this is my first time saying this, I bought an eBay lot with a bunch of the individual models, not the actual box itself. So I didn't get most of the bases. So originally I mounted this one to I believe it's like a cavalry base from Warhammer Fantasy, and then also what is it? Battletech, that's it. And then I think it's a Battletech base for the front because the contact points are so small I couldn't just set the model on a table or something. And then once I got my 3D printer up and running, I managed to print a full-sized base and just glued it on top of that because they weren't going to come off because I attached them not with super glue but with actual plastic cement, so they were not coming apart. I tried to cover it as best I could, especially that octagon, but the texture, which is just Royal and Lang nickel paint just dabbed all over like we've done previously on these models, left to dry overnight, didn't do a great job of covering that up, which is fine. It's not a super thick texture anyway, so I shouldn't really be surprised by that. But we can't change it now, so instead, let's just try to work with it. And I think the best way to do that is going to be to kind of work it into the theme of the base. There's already some extra bricks that the warg is standing on top of, Great Gnashtoof. So eventually we're just going to integrate that and try to make it look like the same sort of stone that the actual model itself already has. Before we get into that though, I started off by base coating the actual base of the model, base coating the base, with cork brown. That's the start of our swampy beach theme, which I think is one of the best themes we've come up with on this channel. I'm very, very proud of it, if I do say so myself. We're not going to finish the base in this video along with the model itself, but we're going to get pretty far, and next week we're going to get into all the specific highlights and whatnot. We still have a long way to go, so there's no point in trying to finish it just yet. After the base of cork brown, I initially grabbed the London Grey and thought I wanted to paint the actual bricks with that, but I knew I was going to need a lot of it, and gray is a pretty easy color to mix, so I just grabbed the white and black, which, since they come in every single Vallejo box, not that that's a bad thing, I have a lot of them. So I went ahead and just mixed a little bit of gray on the fly. It's obviously not the same color as London Gray, but that's fine. Gray is gray. And I made sure to dab quite a bit of it around any areas, like especially flat sections, that were still showing through the actual texture. I was pretty sloppy about it, but we, like I said, we're not even finishing the base this week, and there's about, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5 layers of dry brushes and washes that are gonna go into this before we actually finish up the base. So I'm not really worried about, trying to get everything perfect just yet. And we can always make corrections later. Continuing on with the cork brown, I grabbed a little bit more to do all the bundles of ropes that are on the Kruleboyz. These are always kind of a pain in the ass because I need to get the paint just thin enough to where it will fit into the recesses, but also provide that coverage to the top. A lot of sections of Kruleboyz models will have that. And these will look a lot better once we do the wash at the end of this video. Next up, I broke out black red, a personal favorite color that shows up in a lot of videos because it's just great. It also goes really, really well with the blue wash because it makes wood, which is where we're going to use it here, stand out very, very well by having that tinge of red. And we don't even necessarily need to do any extra highlights of it. It's going to stand out perfectly well all on its own and look woody. There's probably a better word for that. After that is the skin, which is an especially, I want to at best call it like a pain in the ass section. Yellow obviously does not have great coverage, as you would expect from a light color. It's the same with whites. Fortunately, going over a light green isn't too bad, but the yellow skin is always something that just requires having a lot of layers and sometimes making the paint very, very thick. I'm probably going to upset a lot of people watching this. I'm sorry. I know, it's awful. It's awful to look at. Yeah, I gotta get the coverage somehow, guys. I'm sorry. You can roast me in the comments section to your heart's desire, but I promise it's gonna turn out well. If you want a good example of how this is gonna look at the end, the tropical gobos that we painted are perfect. They, look like Simpsons characters, but that's kind of the appeal. It's funny. They're vibrant and fun, They're orc skin that really, really stands out. I guess it is sort of a betrayal to not have them be green, but there's plenty of green on them. Next up, I broke out the light green. I wanted to try this color for the extra, armor panels that are on the warg, but it ended up, I thought it was gonna be a lot closer to the leafy green. It was not, but that's okay, that happens. And honestly, having the panels themselves stand out a bit toward the end is not gonna be a bad thing. And just like with the bases, there's about 3 or 4 layers that are gonna go on top of this, so I'm not super worried about it. I think it'll still work out well, and while it might not look like the leafy green, the contrast between the light green and the blues and aubergines that we used on the warg for its to do its skin, I think is still gonna be a really interesting contrast. And at the end of the day, the individual parts of the model looking good is more important than, well, I don't want to say it's more important than consistency, but I'd rather have it look good. Yeah, so I guess it is more important than consistency. Oh well. Next up, I broke out the royal blue to do a couple of highlights on the back of the warg where a lot more of the skin is showing. I might have gone with an emerald highlight to start, or something that's a little more blue-green, like Vallejo blue-green in retrospect. Obviously, I haven't actually done the further highlights yet, so I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, but I do think it looks good so far. It certainly pairs well and blends well against the Macragge blue and then going into the aubergine. It's still a very, very interesting and very good gradient. I'm very happy with how it turned out. Though after the wash, I am definitely going to do the further highlights with blue-green or emerald. Haven't quite decided yet. The skin definitely needs something just be that little bit brighter, in my opinion anyway. Now with the armor panels and the skin of the warg done, I went back to paint the sheets that are underneath the actual saddle. Sheets, folds of human skin. Seriously, Games Workshop, seriously, this is what I mean when I say it was designed by a 12-year-old that collects knives. I went back and painted these sections with intermediate green, and it was much closer to the leafy green. So I am happy with how that worked out. And again, I don't think that having those sections be a little bit darker compared to the armor panels will be a bad thing in the long run. If anything, it might actually make them more interesting and make the armor panels stand out more. So that light green was not a mistake. I don't want to directly steal Bob Ross's line, but you know what I mean. And finally, I'm going to switch over to the full screen view so we can do the wash here, which is always my absolute favorite parts. We're going to go with royal blue for the actual model itself. By that I mean the Killaboss and the Warg, and then we're going to do an emerald for the base. This is part of why I wish I had done emerald for the back of the Warg, because doing royal blue upon royal blue isn't super interesting, but I think once we get those further highlights on there, and like I said, we're going to do that in blue-green, I think it'll be a lot more interesting to look at. I did stop to put some light green on the cattails before we did the actual wash on the base. I ended up making a lot more corrections with cork brown to make sure everything looked good. I think it turned out well in the end. It should be noted that when doing heavy washes like these, especially with models like Kruleboyz, which just have a lot of recesses, you're gonna need a lot of wash and a lot of patience. It just takes time, and you gotta make sure you get it into every single crack and crevice, and it's a pain, but it's worth it in the long run. After that, I did finally wrap up by doing a dry brush of cork brown over the base, and I think it turned out very, very well. The final step is going to be a dry brush of flat flesh, which is really where these bases come alive, but we're not going to do that just yet because, like I said before, I'm afraid I'm just going to have to end up redoing it anyway because we still have a long way to go on these. And that was the end of our part 1. That's the end where I started to leave it for this week. How do I think it turned out? Well, I think the royal blue wash was heavier than I wanted, but I feel like I say that every time we do Kruleboyz. Like I said, they've turned out so well in the past, and I'm really excited for how they're going to turn out in the future. But it's just going to take some time. I am still putting a lot of thought into how I want to do the weapons and those big spikes on the Killaboss's helmet. We've painted those areas in a couple of different ways. We've done just regular orange. We've done like a cherry red with a gloss paint. I'm still kind of thinking through that. I'm not sure what I want to do. If you guys have opinions in the comment section, you've seen the previous videos like the tropical gobos, the ice grots, and the guys with the crossbows. I forget what we ended up calling them. If you guys have opinions on what you think we should do, feel free to let me know because I'm always interested to hear them. But I think that where I'm leaning is just that cherry red once again, because we've already used it on hero models in the past and generals. So I want to continue that trend, even though I do actually think that the ice grots had the best weapons. However, part of that is also because they had that blue skin tone that really made the orange stand out, so we're not going to be able to replicate that. Anyway, hope you guys like... Wait. Anyway, hope you guys like the project. Like I said, the videos are going to be a little shorter, more informal from here on out, at least for while I'm doing daily uploads. I know it means me putting a little less effort into the actual videos themselves, but I'm hoping that will mean I don't have to take effort away from the actual paint jobs, which are the part that I really want to make sure is continuing to excel. So, you have been amazing. I have been Richard. Wait, other way around. I continue to be Richard. You continue to be amazing. And I will see you guys